Hi, everybody. My name is William. I'm joining you recorded from Denver, Colorado. The purpose of this video is that I was looking to fulfill a requirement for a course that I took through the Napoleon Hill course, and one of those was to teach a course specifically about was to teach a course introducing the principles of Dr. Hill to people who may not be familiar with them. 3 years ago, I took a course on these specific principles through the foundation, point of which the Napoleon Hill Foundation is based out of Wise, Virginia. It's headed by a man named Don Green, who I've had the pleasure of meeting. He's a fascinating person. I could literally listen to him tell me stuff for hours. My goal here today, again, is to share some of the insights that I've learned about Hill's writings and philosophy on achievement. I can tell you that if you're watching this right now, that this is probably the most important thing that you will do today. Believe me on that one. There's a lot of interesting stuff that we're going to go into. So, and the other thing I want to do is to congratulate you on your wisdom and your curiosity to see something like this and to seek out this knowledge. It is said that, those who seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be open to you. And I think that is the case here as well. I think that there's a lot of wisdom that Dr. Hill's teachings can really shine a light on. And I think that they're worth studying today. They're worth taking a look at, and they're worth kind of immersing and seeping yourself in them and seeing where they align with things that can come up in your life. So I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction. So Napoleon Hill, who passed away, I believe, in 1970-something, I actually went to his gravesite, which is in Gaffney, South Carolina. You can go there. It's right off of I-85. But he was born in Wise, Virginia. I first learned about him about 12 years ago during a discussion that Eben Pagan gave. Napoleon Hill had an interview with Andrew Carnegie. Now, Andrew Carnegie was one of the biggest steel tycoons in the late 19th century. And he was an incredibly wealthy man, and Hill had been doing interviews of famous people around the country. And Carnegie suggested to Hill about the potential of writing a science of success philosophy for the masses. And in order to do this, Carnegie gave Napoleon Hill letters of introduction to famous people of that era. To be able to make that happen. And he compiled a lot of these writings into different works and pieces, but he really brought them together in a book that was called The Law of Success in 1928. The book brought Hill immediate financial success, and it was, I think it was like 4 or 8 volumes. It was a very, very large work. I've actually listened to it, and there's some interesting information in it. But right around the time of the Great Depression, I believe that Hill lost a lot of his money, and like many other people, the economy in the entire world just completely changed around. So about 10 years after The Law of Success was published, he took everything and he whittled it down into this book called Think and Grow Rich. Immediately after I heard this description of somebody who actually went out and studied what made people successful and then put it all into one single book, I said to myself, that's something I have to go out and read. I would write this title down if you've never heard of it. If there's any success book to start out with, this is the one. So Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, published 1937. It has had many, many millions of copies sold worldwide, been translated into many different languages. And one thing I can tell you is that a lot of success gurus, they cite a lot of the same concepts that are in this book. So whether it's Tony Robbins or Earl Nightingale or Jim Rohn or Brian Tracy or somebody like that, if you're listening to these folks and you're hearing them, I can tell you it's worth going back to the source and looking and seeing where a lot of this stuff started. I think that Hill has a lot of things to say, which I think that sometimes they can get conflated into different areas. So it's worth going back and taking a look at it and seeing if that philosophy is something that you can integrate in your life and make it bear fruit. Whenever I've had issues personally or financially, I've always referred back to this book for inspiration. I've always found it to have something interesting or something that I've never quite noticed before, but it's able to bring that piece out. Something new always comes out of it. I'm just trying to think of an example. I think that part of it is that when you get older and you go through more experiences, you begin to realize some of the things that he's really talking about. Does that make sense? It's kind of the impression of like if I have a movie that I saw when I was, maybe I was like 21 or something and it didn't really resonate with me, but I watch it 10 years later when you've had some experiences that are similar to what's going on in the film, or you can relate better to them. It's that kind of thing. If you come back to that book, or this book specifically, you will see things in a new light different times that you read it. So definitely get it, and definitely if you get a chance, read it more than once. So why is this book significant? Well, here's my take. In The Law of Success, Hill studied those who were very successful and why they were successful. In Think and Grow Rich, he finesses this down into specific steps to obtain success in life. What sets this book apart from others is that Hill goes to the roots of what riches are and how to obtain them. Riches are defined in Webster's dictionary as having abundant possessions and especially material wealth, or having high value or quality, or highly productive or remunerative. Riches are defined very broadly by Hill, though. He says that they're not just financial and material wealth. In fact, he gives a definition of 12 different kinds of riches. 1, positive mental attitude. 2, sound physical health. 3, harmony in human relations. 4, freedom from fear. 5, the hope of future achievement. 6, capacity for applied faith. 7, willingness to share one's blessings with others. 8, to be engaged in a labor of love. 9, an open mind on all subjects towards all people. 10, complete self-discipline. 11, wisdom with which to understand people. And 12, financial security, money. So financial riches alone are just a mere part of the picture. There's many other pieces out there to it. So it's really up to us to define, for our lives, which riches we are looking to achieve and how we're going to define success specifically. So, and I think that's actually kind of a separate topic I wasn't going to go into, but, how we define success, it's interesting to take a look at that and to think about it. So looking at this list, it could be that your version of success is to have someone who has sound physical health and has a positive mental attitude. By the way, one example about how financial riches alone are just a part of the picture, if you think about the father figure in the HBO show Succession, I believe played by Brian Cox, he is financially wealthy but poor in spirit. Not Brian Cox, but the gentleman that he plays in the show. It's this old tycoon who runs a news network based out of New York City. But he gets to the point where he hates his children, he hates the people that he works with, and at the end of the story, not to spoil it, but he dies an angry and very disappointed person. So think about that and keep that one in mind. So now we're going to go into a breakdown of the discussion that we're going to have. We are going to review 4 concepts from the book. The first one is definiteness of purpose. The second one is the mastermind alliance. The third one is the positive mental attitude. And then the fourth one is habits and cosmic habit force. So we're going to go into each of these. I'm going to do them on different days, but that's going to be the main flow from here. Okay, so now we're going to talk about definiteness of purpose. Now this is the keystone of Hill's philosophy. Let's break down the terms according to Webster's. Definite is free of all ambiguity, uncertainty, or obscurity, unquestionable and decided. Purpose is something set up as an object or an end to be obtained. When Napoleon Hill talks about the importance of having a definite major purpose in our lives, He is talking about having a chief aim, a chief function, a chief mission, the one burning desire that is most important to you at the moment. I see this as beyond goal setting. This is really a more of a philosophy for achievement. And I think that it's also worth asking the question. I mean, what is it that you really want out of life? I think that, we don't really kind of ask ourselves that question. I think that sometimes, especially I live in the United States, and I think that sometimes we can get sucked up in having to try and just make it for today or make it for tomorrow. But, to actually ask the question, what is it that you really want out of being around here on the spinning dirt ball for about, 70 years is average life expectancy right now. So it's important that we ask ourselves this question very seriously. Now, Hill says to make a decision, write it out, codify it, and explain specifically how you're going to achieve that definite major purpose that you're setting out. I think it's important to clarify that when we talk about a definite major purpose, this is not something that we need to do for our entire life. This could be for a stage in our life, or you could have an overall definite major purpose and bring those things forward. Specifically in Think and Grow Rich, I believe that he mentions that every year you should have some kind of definite major purpose, which is in part leading towards your much longer life goal. So it could be that you want to have a certain kind of life and you want to be able to, do the steps that are going to be able to help you set that up for further down the line. I think that Earl Nightingale makes a very interesting suggestion where he says, if you are unsure of your definite major purpose, make it your overall purpose to really discover what that is. We have to be the ones who decide our own fate. I think that Jim Rohn makes an interesting point when he says that allowing others to choose our purpose is the wrong choice, and they can steer it in a way that benefits them. Their plans may not be that much. If you allow somebody else to really take the reins and to really do all of that stuff, you might end up with something that you don't even want to begin with. Another thing to keep in mind, I know someone who had a mentor who he was very close with and who he was very much leaning upon for his future. And then that person ended up passing away, ended up dying. And what is it like when your entire future for something ends up in a pine box with somebody? That's a very, very shattering experience to go through. If that person dies or disappears or treats you badly, you have to be able to take responsibility for what's really going on. So be sure to take control here of your own fate. Napoleon Hill makes an interesting comment here. You are the master of your destiny. You can influence, direct, and control your own environment. You can make your life what you want it to be. Some historical examples of a definite major purpose in practice. Martin Luther, he decided to reform the Christian church and to restore it to its tenets as laid out in the Bible. Franklin D. Roosevelt, his definite major purpose was to deliver the United States out of the Great Depression and to lead the country to victory in World War II, both of which he did. Muhammad Ali became the greatest boxer that the world has ever seen. Mikhail Gorbachev, his definite major purpose was to try and reform the Soviet Union and end the Cold War. He ended up doing one of those things, but the country by that point was beyond reform and was not able to be resurrected. But he did succeed in helping to end the Cold War. My take on it is that a lot of people live their life in a daze. As I said earlier, we've got about 70 years on the spinning dirt ball called Earth, and failing to have a definite major purpose, it contributes to drift. Hill calls this, he defines drift as lazily existing through life from one thing to the next, and my take possibly from one crisis to the next, if you allow that to be, what really controls you. So we really have to pump the brakes and to take responsibility and to grab the wheel. You have the option to determine your fate versus being controlled by outside sources. I think that this part is actually very, very important. I think it's very easy to let other people be the ones who are calling the shots and to be the ones who are determining what our future is going to be. And we have to be able to recognize that when we see it. But there's many things which are in our personal orbit that we can change and that we can make for the better. Napoleon Hill talks in his works very strongly about focusing on what you want. Focusing on what you do not want or what is outside of your control is a waste of energy, and it's only more likely to attract things that you don't want to come to you anyway. So by putting our locus of control and our focus and our minds on the outcomes and the situations and the results that we're looking for, that's going to do us much better than, burning energy on something going on in the news or something, worrying about something where we don't have any influence on it. Let's take an example that Hill gave. Edwin C. Barnes, who wanted to be in partnership with Thomas Edison. He made his way to New Jersey to meet Edison. Despite not having a ticket, he managed to get his way up there on a train. And when he went in, he didn't exactly have a specific plan on how he wanted to work with Edison. But Edison, when he met him, he was impressed, and he ended up giving Barnes a simple job, sweeping the floor in, I think it was their factory or wherever they were working out of. But later on, he ended up going into business with Edison because he kept himself open to potential opportunities. So when they were making, I think it was an Edison dictating machine, a lot of the other sales folks, they weren't interested in doing it. They couldn't see the application for it. And Barnes came in and he said, well, heck, I'll take care of it. I'll go out there and sell it. And he ended up doing very well. And he ended up becoming a partner with Edison. So he found a way to be able to do it. He focused on what was inside of his control, what he could do, and he ended up meeting his definite major purpose in part by keeping himself open to that. It's very easy to be distracted by stuff that's outside. Instead, we have to focus ourselves on the main thing. There was a pastor friend of mine who I asked him how a new pastor was doing, and the advice that he gave this new gentleman coming in was, he said, you have to stay focused on the main thing. In other words, the main thing is the main thing is the main thing. And we have to kind of take that attitude as well, I believe, to stay focused, stay true, and focus on what's possible. You have the option to determine your fate. And that's probably one of the most important things to recognize today. We can end purposelessness existence and really channel it into something that's very, very powerful. If you think about an ocean freighter, if you were to go onto the bridge and you were to ask the captain, where is this giant ship going? He could tell you it's going to go into this port and it's going to get there on this date and it's carrying this and this is what's going to happen when we get it there. So they have everything planned out. And if a ship has no aim or no destination, what's going to happen to it? It's going to end up in disaster. It doesn't just leave the port and then just, says like, oh, I guess we'll, see where we end up, or I guess we'll see what happens. No, they take that stuff very, very seriously. Get very serious about this and ask some of the questions that we're talking about today. We have to have a very similar outlook. If you look at I think that this appears in a couple of the Gospels, but there's a very interesting story. It's a parable where Jesus is walking and he's with his disciples and he comes upon a fig tree and the fig tree doesn't have any fruit on it. And he's looking at the tree and he can't find it and he curses the fig tree because it doesn't bear any fruit. It doesn't do the job that it's there specifically to do. I didn't quite understand this parable for many, many years, but when somebody explained it to me, it was interesting to be able to see, okay, well, the fig tree has a purpose, and the fig tree is creating something, and you know what? I have to be able to get to a point where I'm doing something too, where I'm bringing something to the table and creating something out of this existence, rather than just allowing it to be, determined by somebody else or, not having something at back of it. If you think about everyone out there who has become a great success at something in life, whether it's money or some other pursuit, They did that because they decided that was what they were going to do. They didn't just walk into that situation. So I mentioned earlier about Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali decided he was going to become, the greatest boxer of all time. And for all intents and purposes, he pretty much did. Everyone knew who he was. I think that something which struck me one day was I was out for a walk with someone, and I realized that the neighborhood that we were walking in, every single detail about that place, somebody had to think about, and they had to bring it into fruition. Every billionaire or every person who makes something, if it's a book or if they decided they wanted to become wealthy, they made that choice and they created a plan by which to obtain that. And in the same way, we kind of have to be able to plan our things out very succinctly, make a definite major purpose, create the burning desire for it, whatever it may be, in order to bring that into fruition. Couple personal examples about when I implemented a definite major purpose into things, and these are not specifically things of I could think of the first one here. I didn't know about anything about Napoleon Hill at the time. I first learned about Napoleon Hill probably in about 2013, 2012. But ever since I did, I think that things have changed for the better, and I think that I was able to learn a lot just from his principles alone. But some personal examples. In 2009, there was a jukebox that was at our high school, which was put in there. A young woman she had died in a car accident many, many years ago. And I decided that, because this had been put there in this person's memory, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be kind of cool to be able to fix this thing and to, preserve this person's memory? Obviously, this was given as a gift for a specific purpose. And within a couple months, I was able to raise money from all of the kids who were in the school to be able to fix this thing. We got some guy in who understood how to fix jukeboxes, the old kind that had the 45 RPM records on them, and we were able to fix that. In 2016, I wanted to be part of a specific team on a specific mission. I had other options for other work that I could do, but I decided I didn't want to settle for anything less. So I stuck on trying to be a part of that team again, and I ended up getting it. In 2018, I decided to work on setting my own life up independently. In 2021, I moved to New York City and helped set up a new office for a company. In 2022, I moved out to Denver, and I had to figure out housing and getting a job. And I would say that now a lot of this, if I were to put down kind of an overall definite major purpose, I would say a lot of it's about stepping into the male leadership role that I'm meant to do, and that's relationally, work-wise, spiritually, and financially, and having specific goals behind those things. So visualization. It's very important to see and feel yourself in possession of the goal which you desire. A burning desire will convince yourself of success and attainment. A very modern tool some people use are vision boards. You put them up in an area that you will see. It's a modern exercise which people use to keep themselves focused. My take is also another thing, which is don't forget to give yourself the permission that you want to succeed. You may have believed for years that you are not capable of great achievement. It's very possible that you have family members or friends, yourself, or others who have ingrained a programming for mediocrity in your mind. I saw something the other day. This was a documentary, and it was about alcoholics, and it was interesting to see what they would say to themselves. Like, there was this woman who had a terrible boyfriend that she was with, and she would say, well, why would anyone want to be with somebody like me who drinks so much? And so I put up with him because I don't think anyone would want to be with me. Or they would talk themselves into such a state that you could see why they would get so depressed, and it becomes just a repetitive cycle to the point where they're killing themselves because they're drinking so much. So if you come from a family where success has not been something which is very common, then you may get the idea that look where I came from. I can't do that. That's not possible. That's not me. It's very possible to grow up with that, but it can be overcome. And self-talk and auto-suggestion is one way that can be very helpful in doing that, which is why we need to repeat the definite major purpose so much to ourselves. And the way that Hill puts it is basically saying it to ourselves once when we get up in the morning and then when we're going to bed at night. And the idea behind that, bracketing that in the day, is to drill what we're looking for and what our definite major purpose is and how we're going to obtain it, and to drill it down into ourselves to where it almost becomes second nature. And to where if we're walking about and we see something which might help us in attainment of that goal, that we can recognize that instantly and go directly to it and become very, very success-oriented when those sorts of situations come up. So Hill talks about this idea in his book about, coming from a poverty mindset or coming from a poverty setting where that is the major way of thinking. And to step out of that role and to come into something else, it can be a very challenging experience. It's not necessarily an easy thing. So when I talk about giving yourself permission here, I'm trying to tie it back into what Napoleon Hill talked about. There was an example that he gives in Think and Grow Rich of a young man who was told for years that he would never amount to anything. Well, sure enough, she said that he was going to end up probably in prison, and by 21 he ended up in prison. But he'd been told this stuff for years and years and years and years. So it's kind of this programming that goes into your subconscious, which over years it can really manifest itself into something different. So to step out of that and to give yourself permission to be able to be successful out there, that's a very, very powerful thing. It's a very liberating experience when you can leave that kind of toxic thinking behind and come into your new role. And I can tell you that you can do something, you can make your achievement happen, and with this philosophy you will. And it can help you breach over the brackets of success if you're willing to apply it. I'm sure that there are some of you who are probably watching this today looking for a clue as to what will actually bring about the things that you're looking to make happen in this world. And I can tell you that it's time for you to arrive. And it's time for you to accept this call and to take your seat at the table of success. It can happen, and if you believe it enough, it will happen. It's worth the price of admission. It's worth studying. It's worth reading the books. It's worth going back to the books, by the way, and not just to read it on a computer, just to read it on a Kindle or something. It's worth having those things where you can look at them and you can take notes on them and you can plot out what's going to be your future and what you're actually going to make happen in this world. I'm excited to see it happen just as much as anybody else. Believe me, the things which you can do in this world are incredible. It's just a matter of if you're willing to pay the price of admission and to make it happen. I think that there's a great quote from Henry Ford where he says, if you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right. And what's really profound about that statement is that it kind of highlights that the way that we talk to ourselves has a strong influence on what will actually come through. Great quote to add in here from Napoleon Hill. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. One of the things which I like to do is bearing in mind visualization when we think about bringing things forward that we'd like to. And I think it's important to, as Hill says, to see and feel yourself in possession of your goal and to have a burning desire to convince yourself of its success and attainment. We're not talking about delusioning ourselves as much as it is telling ourselves that it is possible and that it will happen, that we will succeed that which we put our mind to specifically. To make things a little bit easier on this process, what I'm going to do is I've created a sample 90-day plan which I'm going to implement, and I'm going to commit to you guys here who are watching this, and we're going to see how well I did by the time that the 90 days is up. And the goal behind this is to put a little bit of social pressure on me to get some of these things done, but also to give you an idea of how something like this could work. And this is going to be a 90-day plan, and I will update what the progress is every time that I do a video on one of these principles. I'll come back in and kind of explain where we are with these things, what needed to be changed, what needed to be tweaked, and kind of put this into motion so that we can all see how this sort of process will work. Now, if you have a definite major purpose that you'd like somebody else to take a look at, myself, I'd be happy to do that. That's one of the things I'd like to do as part of this kind of community project for completing this final requirement. You can email me your definite major purpose at naphillproject@gmail.com. And there'll be a little thing for it down here again. That's naphillproject@gmail.com. And I will take a look at your plan, see if there's anything in there I might recommend tweaking a little bit or kind of codifying a bit more. But let's go into what I've created here. So, and I'm just looking off screen at what I have written down here. So my definite major purpose over the next 90 days is to step into the role that God intends me to take. This will involve 3 components: adopting a healthier lifestyle, improving my finances, and completing tasks that I have put off. Healthier lifestyle. I currently weigh 240 pounds. I actually know that because I weighed myself just a couple days ago. For the next 90 days, I commit myself to a strict low-carb diet completed with my spouse. I will cease to eat foods or drinks for pleasure, including fried and fast foods, candy, sodas, alcohol, or anything which does not conform to this diet. I commit to working out or exercising for 1 hour daily over the next 90 days. I've got a big dog, so I guess that makes it a little bit easier. He likes to go on long walks. Anyway, I will measure my weight every other day to track my progress and adjust accordingly. Also, I will make smarter choices. I will do my own thinking. I will complete tasks correctly, even if that means going slower. I will rekindle relationships with those who have done me well. I will cut off relationships that are no longer healthy. Let's go into the second part, improving finances. Okay, I will review all expenses over the next 90 days. I will commit to creating an emergency savings account of $1,000 within the time for unseen expenses. I will also commit to consolidating my retirement accounts for greater compounding interest before the 90 days has been completed. To increase my finances, I will recommit myself to providing an accounting for outgoing expenses, seek additional areas of financial gain, and implement a positive, productive attitude in my current occupation. That's a mouthful. I might need to edit that a little bit, but that's what we're going to go with. At my current job, I will complete additional trainings to advance myself. And now we're going to go off into the third part, completing tasks put off. I will review all personal projects I have neglected for the last year, including personal projects, medical, spirituality, items at home, relations with friends and relatives, and compile these into smaller tasks. Smaller tasks into a list for execution within 1 week. So I'm going to make a separate list, which I'm not going to quite share here, but I'm going to, put out all of the specific things which I put off for a long time, just to see what those things are. Some of these include, but are not limited to, completing the final Napoleon Hill course requirement, which is this video here, and then the subsequent ones that are going to follow. Uploading new video content online. That's something I've wanted to do for a while. I think that I can do this stuff. Renewing memberships that have elapsed. I've got one posted right over here I need to take care of. Acquiring new replacement furniture. So for here, that's something that we've talked about. Finding a new church to join. Tithing. And before the 90 days is complete, I will review this list for weekly completion or updates. So that's what I put together here. And I'm going to Yeah, this is probably going to get tweaked a little bit, but I'm going to start reviewing this before as I get up in the morning, and say it to myself again as I'm going to bed, and we'll see how much of this stuff gets drilled in and gets taken care of. So I hope that by putting myself out here, a little bit of social pressure, this is going to make me much more accountable. That's another thing you may want to keep in mind is when you're putting together your definite major purpose, uh, if you let people who are positive minded know what you're doing, it does help to make you more accountable. And that's another thing is that you can ask a friend or somebody who would be in your mastermind group, can you help make me a little bit more accountable here? That's another good thing and another tool that's available for you. So anyway, I wish you guys so much joy and luck on your journey. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, I congratulate you as well. I really do appreciate that you took the time to take a look at this, and I hope that you got something out of it. If you have any feedback, let me know at the email address again, and I guess we'll see each other in about a month. So, see you then.